All right, here we go. I call this meeting to order. Welcome. It is 6 p.m. on December 12th, 2023. You have to excuse me, I'm a little lost my voice a little bit. It's coming back. Appreciate y'all being here tonight. We're here in Richfield for the Southern Region Advisory Council meeting. And first of all, keep in mind, if you're here in the room, our audio microphones are up in the ceiling. So those watching online and those participating can hear you just as well as me. So let's keep our conversations to a minimum. You can take them outside if you need to continue. This meeting is being held here and on YouTube as well. So this is a public forum allowing you to express your opinions and proposals on wildlife management in the state. The Wildlife Board, not the RAC, is charged with setting wildlife policy for our state. We all have our ideas and opinions. I spoke about this before, but please keep everything as cordial and nice as we can. Please refrain from booing, yelling, talking while someone else is talking, and please be respectful. It's important. We'd like to welcome all the RAC members, and we have a board member here as well, Paula Richmond. Thank you for being here tonight. We also have our law enforcement chief, Wyatt Bubak, is here as well. Welcome. And RAC members, we've got a few online and a few here in person. So we'll let everybody introduce themselves, where they're from, and which group they represent. Verlin, would you like to start?
Verlin King, I live in Bicknell. I represent agriculture.
Russ Gardner, I live in Enterprise.
Chuck Chamberlain, live in Cedar City, represent Forest Service.
I'm Austin Atkinson, serve as the chairman of the RAC for Cedar City, representing public at large.
I'm Mike Grant from Annabelle, Utah here, represent the sportsman.
Dan Fletcher, Cedar City, representing Bureau of Land Management.
We've also got a big group online. We'll start with Tammy and then go Rachel, Riley, Bryant, Chad. That's a pretty big group. Tammy?
So Tammy Pearson, I live in Minersville. I'm a Beaver County Commissioner and I serve the elected official position.
So I'm Rachel Bolus. I'm in Cedar City and I'm non-consumptive.
Riley Roberts, I represent Sportsman, Tropic, Utah.
Brian Johnson, public at large, Monroe, Utah.
And Chad.
Can you hear me?
Gotcha.
Chad Utley, St. George, public at large.
Thank you. Good group tonight. Thank you, everybody, for joining. We'd like to welcome the DWR staff, especially those biologists and everybody who works with the DWR to make sure that the plans have been in place. And you guys are busy this time of year, so we appreciate you being here tonight. Any of the public that are attending here in person or watching, you will have a chance to provide comments and questions. If you have comments, please fill out a green comment card. There's some up front here on the desk. You fill that out and pass it to us, and we'll make sure to call on you when we get to that agenda item. Any public that's watching on YouTube will not be able to comment, but they were able to provide comment on all these proposals previously online. Sound good? Okay, we're going to move on to agenda item number 2, which is the approval of the agenda for tonight's meeting and the minutes from our November 14th. It was a long one. If you haven't looked at the minutes, there's quite a few in there, but I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda and minutes. Chuck?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Motion from Chuck to approve.
Second.
Second from Verlin. Any discussion? All right. Take a vote here in person. All in favor? Raise a hand. Unanimous here in person. Online? Give us
Yes.
a thumbs up, raise your hand. Good to go. Chad raised his hand, unanimous. Didn't miss anybody, right? I don't think so. Okay.
Let me ask just a question. We switched the way we were doing the minutes, I don't know, 6 or 8 months ago, and went to from doing it verbatim to kind of more of a summary. We've been trying to find the right amount of detail. I think we were a little low on detail to begin with. Is everybody happy with the level of detail that's coming out of the minutes now? Okay.
I think so. I mean, I like to look through my own comments, and I'd suggest recommended look through your own and make sure it's recorded the way you expected it to, or any public comment that stands out. Make sure that it looks good. Thank you for that. Okay, now I get to provide you an update from the last wildlife board meeting, which was a good one. It was a long one. Let's see here. So the wildlife board meeting was held November 28th, right after Thanksgiving. And I'll go through some of the motions here and hopefully I accurately represent how the wildlife board voted. So the motion was made to accept the mandatory harvest survey amendments as presented. That was instituting the fee or the restriction to apply, and that passed unanimously. The pronghorn augmentation sites, that was passed unanimously as well, as proposed by the division. The hunt structure, that was the mule deer research proposal. It was mainly centered around Southern Region here in Utah. That motion that passed there was to reject the division's proposal and to ask the mule deer committee to discuss the recommendations and bring them forth next year. And also ask the committee to include some sort of research project. So none of those seasons or changes, restrictions were passed for 2024. All that will be pushed to the mule deer committee. So hunting seasons for general season deer down here will remain the same as previously approved for next year. For the emerging technologies, this was the muzzleloader and archery length restrictions amendments. We'll welcome Bart. Bart, welcome to the party. I don't know if I can see him, but
Sorry, I was
Bart,
having
you wanna-
difficulty getting on.
You're good. Would you like to introduce yourself real quick, Bart?
Bart Batista, non-consumptive rep, Kanab, Utah.
Thanks, Bart. Just going through the wildlife board meeting. So agenda item number 6, emerging technologies. The motion that was passed was to accept the division's proposal, but to allow only a 1 power scope or a red dot on a muzzleloader. So that essentially rolls it back to a pre-2016 definition, how it was before. So open sights, a 1 power scope or a red dot is all that is allowed on the regular muzzleloader. You've probably seen some news stories, and I'm sure there'll be more going around about that before the application time. Dedicated hunter program amendments. The motion made there was to accept the division's recommendations and to ask the division to prepare an annual report on how the bought out hours or dollars are spent. So anybody who buys their hours instead of providing service, they've asked the division to provide a report on that on where that money goes. For the landowner association rule amendments, there's a motion made that passed unanimously to accept the division's recommendation to remove the public access requirement from the LOAs as presented. That creates option number 2. That passed. Second motion was to accept the division's recommendation to establish a limited entry draw for non-LOA lands as presented. That passed. There was a motion made to allow up to 10% above the total number of unit permits for general season landowner permits on private property. That failed for lack of a second. The motion that passed was to issue up to 6% above the total number of unit permits as general season landowner permits on private property that would be issued over the counter. And the last one for LOA permit recommendations, it was to accept as presented, passed unanimously. When it gets into CWMUs, I move that we do not add 1 additional buck or bull tag on the double cone CWMU, which would And that passed unanimously to not pass additional permits. There was an amended motion, or a motion to amend the permit recommendations on Gildersleeve CWMU from 20 buck deer permits to 10 buck deer permits, and from 10 elk down to up to 20 bull elk permits, and that passed unanimously. And there was a following motion for CWMUs to accept the remaining recommendations as presented, and that ask the division to report on units 4, 5, and 6. That's just all Morgan South. There was a motion on the landowner association advisory committee members.
So there should be a motion in there on the one in the Beaver,
Kimberly.
the Kimberly CWB.
That did not pass.
Right, they just.
So there wasn't a motion.
It was passed
Wasn't
as
a motion.
presented.
So it just went, it's just a deer CWB.
Because the recommendation for the Kimberly Creek was
Yeah.
0,
Right,
right?
so
So
it
it
passed,
passed as
right.
is. So Kimberly Creek is a deer only CWMU. The Landowner Association Advisory Committee was to place the following members on the Landowner Association Advisory Committee. Sportsman's reps, Troy Justison and Donnie Hunter. LOA representatives, Dale Christiansen and Andy Monroe. Agriculture representative, Stephen Tu. At-large representative, Greg Wilding, and a RAC member representative, Scoot Flannery. That passed unanimously. When it got to the Deep Creek Elk Unit, this was not an action item for RACs, but it was for the Wildlife Board. That was to accept the division's Deep Creek Elk Unit recommendation as presented. And that is to not turn it into an any bull unit. So the West Desert Deep Creek will remain as is until after the 2025 season, when it's reviewed as part of the statewide elk plan. Bookcliff's Little Creek South Bison Hunt variance request. They're saying there were permit holders that wanted to move that forward due to conditions on the hunt, and that passed unanimously to accept the division's recommendation as presented. And the last motion was to make some corrections to the approved, prohibited, and controlled list changes, and that passed unanimously to accept it as presented. So, it was a good wildlife board meeting. So just go back and watch it if you haven't. All this is on YouTube, probably forever. So check it out.
Hey, you know, you talked about the trying to find where the money goes for those bought out points. Was that something that came from the other acts too? I know we talked about it.
From what I recall, it was discussed quite a bit in RACs. I don't know how many RACs had motions on it. I don't recall, but from the wildlife board, it was to provide a report on where the money goes.
Yeah, I knew we talked about it. I didn't know if there was others that were concerned about that too.
I've read it a few times. I don't think we've heard the end of it. Okay, we'll turn some time over to Kevin for the regional update.
Okay, Adam, if you could pull that presentation.
Yep.
Okay, we'll start by giving some credit for that picture. I would assume that's a picture that Adam took, and if you look close, there's a group of turkeys in that opening in the middle of all the fall colors there, so.
That was on Zion Main.
Capturing all of it there. Wildlife section is super busy right now, and I'll give you some updates on that, but Teresa wanted me to point out, so that picture in the top right, that's a collared doe. She's 9 years old and she still has twins with her this year. So that's pretty cool. And then the pictures of the bucks are all taken postseason this year. So all those pictures were taken within the last 3 to 4 weeks. You know, the pheasant program is popular with the public. It's also really popular with our staff because 3 of the managers that updated their slides mentioned the pheasant program, and so you'll get that as a repeating theme here. So we've been releasing pheasants out in several places, and there's always a dust cloud of trucks following the vehicle that's releasing them. So desert bighorn disease testing on the minerals in the Oak Creeks, mule deer classification. I haven't told these guys I was going to do this, but Jason, ballpark, how many deer have you classified so far?
A little over 2,000.
And how many mornings and evenings?
Every morning.
Probably 30, 35.
Yeah. Mike, how many deer have you classified?
1,600. Like 2,200.
I mean, and in the middle of all the captures and everything they're doing, it's a super important part of what our district biologists do. And I just they take it really serious. These guys just don't sleep this time of year because it's early mornings and late evenings and maybe a nap during the middle of the day. If they don't have a capture, they have to go run on the same day. So we'll be doing some deer collaring on multiple units coming up. If stay in touch with Teresa or any of the RAC members if you want to get involved with that. I know Mike's already been out on the capture here on the Monroe. I will also be collaring over 100 elk and collaring them in January on the plateau, the Monroe, and the Dutton to continue to look at migratory patterns between those units. Next slide there. Christmas bird counts coming up here very quick. So Danielle Finlayson takes the lead on that. Danielle, would you raise your hand? If anybody wants to get involved with that, Danielle would gladly accommodate that. We also have our winter raptor surveys coming up. Utah Prairie Dog Crew is working on reports and surveys. I will mention that the memorandum of understanding on the Prairie Dog Conservation Plan has been signed by almost all of the partners so far, including the counties. And so that's the very first step towards then us working with the Fish and Wildlife Service towards a species status review, which we hope then ends in a delisting of that species, which isn't going to happen quickly. It's 5 to 10 years down the road, but I'm glad we've at least started that process. And then finished an important guzzler on the buckskin overlook out on the Ponsadon with the BLM. Our aquatic section, a lot of planning going on right now with there. So there's going to be a multi-reservoir plan for all the Washington County reservoirs, Sand Hollow, Quail Creek, and Gunlock. There's an online survey that I think has already gone out for that. The committee will get started here shortly, and then that'll be presented here in the RACs this spring. We're also putting together a committee for Paiute Reservoir, and that one will be done and presented to the RACs late spring as well. Our Washington County field office is always really busy. I'm not going to read down through all of those, but just a list of an idea of how involved that program is. You've got the largest or the fastest growing community in the United States with a bunch of endangered fish flowing through the only couple of water sources that flow through the community. It's important, and they're really busy and they stay on top of that. And so far, we haven't had any additional listings. In fact, we've had some down listings even in the face of all of the growth down in Washington County. And we'll hear some of that that's on our agenda tonight about again, more idea of the stuff they've got going on there. They also respond to a lot of nuisance wildlife in Washington County. And there's somebody on call down there 16 hours a day, 7 days a week to respond to those. Habitat section, this is the time of year where they really earn their money with all the habitat projects. Just highlight that, so there was my mind's gone blank, the infrastructure money that Congress passed, it included some money for wildlife crossings, and we received a $5.5 million grant, or actually UDOT did with our help to extend the fence down along Highway 89 and add, is it 3 underpasses? I think 3 new underpasses. Do you know how far that's going to extend, Kyle? In the plan, is it going to go clear down to where it drops off the hill?
So it's gonna start right where the old fence ends and go almost all the way to Canab.
Okay.
Up through Johnson.
So Johnson Canyon, some of that country. You know, we're also getting some new tools to deal with cheatgrass. And we're experimenting with some new herbicide on some of our property. I know that the BLM and the Forest Service is also working to get some approvals on some of the new herbicide tools that we have that, you know, have a chance to make a real difference in controlling cheatgrass out on some of the desert country. Let's go on to the next slide there, Adam, if you would. Just some pictures there. I don't know what the story is behind that, the moose on the Guzzler. I don't know if it's gotta be on the Fish Lake.
Or South Manti,
Is it, do you know which?
probably South Manti.
South Manti. So we do, I don't know if anybody knows the history. About 30 years ago, we tried to release, to get moose established on the Fish Lake, and they never really took, but there's still, it is about 30 years ago, isn't it, Vance?
Yeah, it was in the 90s.
Yeah.
There's a handful left.
Yeah,
Yeah, but on the South Manti, they've done a little better.
there's still, you still see them occasionally up around Fish Lake. Our outreach section, you can see all the pictures of the pheasant program. So we've had some fall interns. I think it's worth pointing out with just our youth pheasant hunts, or actually we call them beginning hunter hunts that we had in Cedar City and Annabelle and the Pavant. We had over 400 people that attended, and those are focused on people that have either only hunted a little bit or never at all. And so those are a huge success. I have a bald eagle viewing event in late January, the Snow Goose Festival out in Delta in February. If you've never gone out and experienced that, it's worth experiencing. You know, when you have 50,000 snow geese come over the top of you, it's a pretty interesting experience. And then the dedicated hunter program, everything's going to be moving online with that, with tag returns and everything else. So there'll be some bumps in the road as we get people trained on that, but I think that's a good move overall. Law enforcement, the story there is we're short-handed at the moment, so be patient. We currently have our Kane County, West Washington, East Iron, Salina, Beaver, and one in Iron County's up there. Those districts are all currently open. And we do have we're in the process of hiring new officers right now, but the training process that they go through, there'll be at least 9 months before we have any on the ground, and we won't be able to fill all of those vacancies. We're probably, Wyatt, 2 to 3 years out if we keep everybody we have before we're fully staffed.
Yes, yep.
And that's all I have. I'd be happy to answer any questions from either active members if you have any.
Thank you, Kevin. Okay, we'll move on to action item here. Number 5, Utah Black Bear Management Plan Revision. R 657-33. Aaron, welcome tonight.
Thank you. I can give a brief summary if you want, or we can just dive in. Whatever you prefer.
So everybody on their action have reviewed the presentation before. If you haven't, then you should have. Doing yet? Just a brief update, I think, would help where we're at in the management plan and where we're at in permits.
Yeah. So this coming season will be the 3rd year of the 3-year black bear cycle that the board approved a couple years ago. So we're not recommending any changes to permits this time. That's not part of the action item tonight. I'm happy to answer any questions on the presentation. I put some data in there, just kind of what the status of black bears looks like at the moment. And we're really just asking we're recommending 2 things tonight. One is the change to the rule to allow people to take the bear orientation course after they draw their permit. This is something that came up last year that the board approved. And so we're recommending we adjust the rule to make that possible. And then the other thing is a tweak to the bear management plan. We updated the plan last year as well. And when we were looking at things this year, we realized that there's still a stipulation in the plan that requires us that all the harvest parameters in the state fall within the moderate category, which is when the Bear Committee met, we felt like we wanted to give more autonomy to our district biologists, and that ran counter of what the Bear Committee wanted to do. And so we're recommending that we eliminate that statewide roll-up requirement in the plan. So in other words, a district biologist can choose his management strategy and permits, and those permits won't be adjusted based on a statewide roll-up anymore. That'll be something that obviously everybody will look at, but it won't be required necessarily. So, and that's really it. That's all we're asking for.
Thank you, Darren. Call for questions from the RAC members. Any questions for Darren?
Chuck? Yeah, I'm not as familiar with bear hunting as other hunting in the state, so you have a hound hunt, it's in November. Is that meant to target the males after the females?
Yeah, you may have some males. You're more likely to harvest males that time of year, and that's something that we've done for a long time. We just haven't gotten rid of it. But usually this year's a little different, but a lot of years those females are denned up by the end of October, early November. So if anything happens.
Have you had any concerns about the condition of the bears? Chase them just before they go?
We haven't had any indication when we visit. Mostly the dens we're visiting are females, so we don't look at a lot of males in the winter time, but that doesn't seem to have been an issue.
There's very little harvest that takes place in that November.
I don't think that many people even really hunt it. They're more focused on lions, but if they're a field and have to chase a bear, then they have permits.
No, probably the same question I have every time. The Black Bear Advisory Committee members, I see one agriculture, Utah wool growers, where's Farm Bureau, where's Cattlemen's?
Yeah,
it looks like
these committees were, you always struggle with how many people do we have on it, and how big does it need to be before it gets unwieldy. So we chose somebody that we felt like talk to and represent agriculture real well. Sierra Nelson is not shy about letting everybody know what she thinks.
Yeah, I think she's good, but if you look, there's sportsmen, there's wildlife. I mean, looks like it's packed certain ways, like every time.
No, that's true. I think you're right, Vernon. We need to look at that. We do have a new process in place that the board looks at these committees and approves them now, and so we have that check on when we do committees. Also, too, with predators, they're a little bit different committee. A lot of times, sportsmen on these committees have a different outlook when it's predators, and so a lot of times, agriculture and sportsmen's interests align on these. Yeah.
Any other questions from the RAC?
So on the roll-up plan, to open that up, how many units will that open the state into? Or subunits or sections of the
It'll be the
state?
same number of hunt units. We're not going to change that. What it does is, the way it would work is that first the biologists go through each of their districts and decide what their harvest strategy is going to be, whether it's going to be light, moderate, or liberal.
For that specific.
that
I guess I
specific
maybe
unit.
didn't clarify.
Yeah.
So they'll be able to specifically manage their personal
There
unit.
used to be, and we changed this last time, there used to be a requirement that only a certain number could be in light, and only a certain number stayed. I think it was 10% or something like that. I don't remember, quarter of them. It was about 6. And what we changed last year is to allow biologists, regardless of how many of those units there are in the state, to choose the harvest strategy they think is necessary for that district, based on their experience. But what we left in the plan, what we overlooked, is that there's a secondary requirement that we look at all of those permit recommendations, and then if the statewide, if you roll all those, average all those, either adult males above 5 and percent females don't fall within the moderate category, then I need to start calling biologists, say, hey, I know you want 10 permits, but we need to either increase or decrease permits based on this statewide rollout. We're asking to get away from that requirement and let the biologists decide on the ground what they need.
I have a question. But the success rate and those that, prevent overs on bear, is that pretty minimal?
It's high success for people who hunt with bait and hounds. Success rates are pretty high. It depends on the unit. Bear density in the unit plays a big role. On our most dense units, even the spot and stock hunts are relatively good, better than I would have predicted when we started. So, and again, if the unit has a lot of bears, you see bears and might have a chance to harvest one. And if it doesn't, then you're not likely to harvest one without using dogs or bait.
Any questions from the public? Want to summarize the public comment we got?
Yes,
Online.
very different this time compared to last time. We had two people that got on and commented. They were both indicated they strongly agreed that the written comments, the one that put written comments talked about, wanting additional spot and stock opportunities, but still strongly agreed with the recommendation.
Okay, I have one comment card for this agenda item. Mr. Richmond, I don't have a microphone, so you can stand. We'll pick you up with the microphone. You can stand and address the rack.
I feel like with the camera right here, I could just sit.
I've got your nose.
So Braden Richmond representing myself. I did sit on this bear committee, so I felt like I wanted to come and represent that tonight. On the committee, actually, let me back up a little bit. I do agree with Verland, especially on these predator management plans, that I think we do need to look and get more representation there. We hear from the landowners frequently, from the ag, from the ranchers, and although Sierra Nielsen is awesome, she was one voice, and we maybe could have used more. So having said that, there was a lot of discussion on this plan. One of the things that the committee really did feel strongly about was this idea of having more decisions made by the local biologists. So we're glad to see that come back. Just a little note there that may help you. On the management strategies, there's 3 of them, right? But if you look at those on bears, really the strategies, even the high harvest strategy increases population. If you really read through it. The medium and low definitely are targeted towards increasing population. That's unique. We don't do that with some of our other animals. It's about maintaining or decreasing levels. So I would strongly encourage you to support this. I think it gives our biologists a lot of opportunity to increase intake that may help with some of the concerns we're seeing with our field right
now. One more comment card for JJ Brewer.
Want me to just stand right here, or what works?
Yeah, you just stand right there, yep.
So, JJ Brewer representing the Utah Housing Association. Thank you very much for allowing us to be here to have public comment. Thank you all. Thank our biologists and all you guys. We really do appreciate it. We have a very good system on the bear committee as well, so we appreciate that. Coming tonight, we really, again, appreciate everything. We only had I have quick 4 units I just quickly wanted to discuss. That we understand that the bear plan is not currently due for any changes. However, there are 4 units we feel that we would love to address, or at least bring it up in front of the RAC here tonight. Those are the Boulder, specifically the LaSalle, the Bookcliff, Spitter Creek, and San Juan. Those specific units definitely have some trends right now of less harvest, more sow harvest, female harvest. Bear populations on those have definitely been brought down more than they have in the past. We would ask as a housing association that would look at maybe decreasing each unit specifically by 10 tags. Again, we understand that the plan is not due till next year to be called for that, but we would ask to maybe look into those. Bear harvest on those is definitely down. The age class is very much down, specifically on each of those units of what has been harvested. Again, we appreciate, to be here and have a voice. We just hope that we can continue to manage wildlife this way. We greatly appreciate that we're able to come together and have a voice. Look forward to moving in the future. Bear hunting is something that is very much enjoyed by many people, hound hunters, bait hunters, spawn stock. So we want to ensure that we have a healthy population. We manage for a healthy population. We want the ranchers, we want the deer, the elk, we want it all to work together and come up with a happy medium. So Thank you.
Thank you, JJ. It's all public comments we have for this agenda item, so open it back up to RAC discussion. Russell?
Well, the question I kind of have is the depredation of the bears on the mule deer. Cattle, is there any solid numbers on how much the mule deer get killed like that?
We don't have, usually once deer are old enough to escape, bears aren't a huge factor. We do have some preliminary data on the LaSalle's and San Juan that shows for neonate fawns, 1 year data, about 15% are taken by bears on those units. And it varies by unit, and I don't have it in front of me, but roughly that. That's similar to lions for those units. It probably depends on bear densities, so those units have a lot of bears. But the bears definitely do target, especially new fawns. Once the fawns are old enough to escape, a couple weeks old, generally bear predation drops off. As far as agricultural damage, most of the damage we see from bears is to sheep. One of the reasons we have wool growers on our committee is because there are a few cows here and there that get usually calves, but mostly the sheep. A bear can kill a lot of sheep in an evening if they get them cornered and it can cause a lot of damage. So we definitely keep an eye on that and track that. It tends to, it's dropped off in recent years, the number of incidences reported and the number of animals taken, but it's still something that concerns us when we work with the Department of Agriculture and with wool growers to try and see if we can help them solve those concerns.
So we try to document all of those that we can. Anytime they're reported, there's an investigation done by Wildlife Service, and they can confirm who was killed by a bear, then it's documented, and we reimburse the owner. So,
Yeah, I'm kind of aware of that. They discuss quite a bit about the mule deer plan, trying to figure ways to help. I guess I'm curious, more curious, what do we need to do with bears to help the mule deer?
Yeah, we're looking at all of that stuff. And BYU's done a really good job of quantifying, what causes of mortality are occurring out there and what things we probably ought to be concerned about. So we'll keep working that problem.
Tammy, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to echo what Vernon said. I can't remember if it was Chad or who that said we need a higher representation of ag on these committees. I know Sierra very well, and yeah, you're correct. She's not shy. She could handle about 4 you guys. But I still think that's something that we need to look at. Across the state, and everybody that I talk to, a lot of the commissioners are ag producers, and they hear a lot about the predation. And I know we worked really hard on the mountain lions and that, but I think the bear are just about as bad from what I can understand. And the thing about that is they don't leave much evidence. So if you're not right there within the next day or two, you're not going to know that that's what happened. And so anyway, but I appreciate what you guys have done, and I like the recommendations.
Darren, can I ask a question about, mainly about Utah Houndsman Association? They're stated that they sent us extreme winter conditions from 2023, lower bear populations. What are the mechanisms we have to change permits within the 3-year permit cycle? If there was something extreme, would you have brought that to us?
Yeah, we look at the numbers. We prefer to keep this on a 3-year cycle, and so unless there was some big emergency that we saw, we feel like 3-year cycles for bears is enough. So what would happen under the normal cycle is that next year biologists will look at all the last 3 years worth of numbers, and some of the units they mentioned do show it's kind of a mixed bag as far as where they fall within their harvest strategy, but all those adjustments would be made next year and then run for 3 years. So theoretically, if a biologist had concerns that too many bears would be taken, he could reduce permits and then allow that to run for 3 years. So we're trying to avoid this sort of annual jumping around and be a little bit more consistent over a period of time. Having said that, obviously if the RAC wants to discuss changes, that the permits aren't on the agenda, so if a person had an opinion about permits, they may not have come tonight because they didn't think it was on the agendas. Just
Sure.
bear that in mind. But,
Thank you.
yeah.
Other RAC discussion. Entertain a motion then.
I'll make a motion to approve the division's recommendations.
We got a motion by Dan to approve recommendations as presented.
I'll second that.
Second by Mike. Discussion needed on the motion. Everybody online hear the motion okay?
Yes.
Okay, we'll do the vote. All those in favor of the motion here in person, raise your hand. Unanimous here and online. Got fair to do. Chad. I'll call for Chad's vote. That's the only one I didn't get.
I think Chad's frozen.
I voted yes.
Yes. Oh, thank you, Chad. Passes unanimous. Thank you, Darren.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, agenda item number 6, elk management unit plans. We've got Daniel here to bring us up to speed.
Yeah, so I'm assuming you all watched the presentation. We're taking 8 plans through the RAC and Wildlife Board cycle that have recommended changes to their population objectives in the unit. And then there's 2 units that were split into 2 separate units. The Yellowstone was separated from the Bonanza, Vernal, Diamond Mountain, and the Nebo and Manti were split into their own units. 4 of the units we're recommending population changes to are down south here. So if you want, I can name them. There's the, one second. So I'll just go over all of them briefly. Box elder, 1 subunit, we're recommending an increase of 400 animals. The Morgan South Ridge, we're recommending an increase of 400 elk. The Yellowstone, we're recommending a decrease, decreasing from 5,000 down to 3,500. What makes that a little different is we're also not counting elk that live on tribal land. In our population estimate, we don't have any management authority over the youth tribal land. So we don't have authority to manage those elk, so we're no longer counting them. By doing that, we're actually allowing that the public portion of that to expand. So even though on paper we're reducing the objective, in practice it'll allow for about 500 to 1,000 more elk to expand on that public portion that hunters have access to. The like I said, the Diamond Mountain Vernal Bonanza is being split from the Yellowstone as well. No change there. The Nebo, we're recommending an increase of 750 elk, and we split the Manti from the Nebo. They were used to be the Central Mountain Plan. Now they're 2 separate plans. The Southwest Desert, we're recommending an increase. The objective was 975. We're recommending the objective increase to a range of between 1,050 to 1,250. The Fillmore unit, we're recommending a change on the Pavant subunit for that population to range from 1,300 to 1,600 animals. And the Oak Creek portion of that subunit, the objective will be up to 150 elk. Lower than that is fine. The Beaver, we're recommending an increase in the objective to a range of 1,150 to 1,350. The previous objective was 1,050. In Panguitch Lake, we're
expanding the range. So the previous objective was between 1,100 and 1,300 elk, and we're recommending a range of 1,000 to 1,500. So a little higher, a little lower on those.
Thank you. Yeah. Questions from the RAC? Units are in our region that have population changes rarely.
Well, on these units in our region, or the units that have livestock permits on them, are these livestock permits increasing too?
I don't know. The local biologists might.
But the answer is no.
I can speak to the beaver. There has been increases. There have been. There has been.
Is that right, Danny?
No, there's no increases. It's a heavy lift to get Forest Service and BLM to increase AUMs. We can't even get our suspended AUMs reinstated, so there's definitely no increases. And I do think, if I remember right, on the beaver unit, it was downsized a few years back on the last plan, and we kind of went back up to the original number. Am I right?
No, beaver objective hasn't changed since like 2007.
Did we just increase tags then?
Yeah. We've
Okay.
increased tags a lot there.
Okay.
More questions? Yes.
So on your, when you make these proposals on these units, do you contact the individual cattlemen and get their feel for how it might impact them, or how does that process work?
So to recommend a change in population objective, we have to have local committees meet. Those committees have representation from agricultural groups, like wool growers, cattlemen, farm bureau typically, and then sportsmen's groups, elected official, member of the public at large. We can have the local biologist say who specifically was on these committees, but there is a process in which we gather public input and have representatives of different interest groups.
I know it's questions, but I'm the chairman, so Russell, I did get to sit on a couple of these committees, mainly Southwest Desert and Beaver, when we went through these elk management plans. And it's interesting to me, as a hunter, as a sportsman, I see 200 elk. I go, that's not many elk, right? But you see it from a totally different perspective. And I will say, on the committees I was a part of, it was very much discussed of every elk of taking away, right, feed from cattle. So I won't say it's a fight, but the discussion is, has the habitat improved? Do we have more water? Do we have more space? Are we working together so that you can take advantage of your Forest Service BLM permits, and we can still have toleration for elk? And I felt like in the committees I was a part of, it came to a consensus that this number wasn't shoved down anybody's throat. It was debated, and it came down to a range so that we could see where we need to be on the bad years versus the good years and tolerance. So I would speak for anybody on the committee and say they were 100% for it, right? That's not how it works, but I would say they were overrepresented from the cattlemen, from the ag side, to where I felt like it was more than fair and balanced as far as participation in the meetings. But that's my opinion.
And one other thing I should mention is the Beaver Plan and the Southwest Desert Plan set specific goals to reconvene or convene another committee in 3 to 5 years to talk about how this potential change has played out. And I'm assuming that was because of this concern of increasing elk affecting cattle. So the plans were set up to be checked in 3 to 5 years to ensure that that's not happening And if it is, we can change the population objective and when the plans are reopened. So there's that kind of safety net.
All right, so you've got these Southwest Desert, Fillmore, anyway, these that have a range in there, and you quoted the drought, you know, if there's a drought and that. So is it stated in there that if there's a drought this year, we can go from, like on Southwest Desert, 1,250 down to 1,050? I mean, in the past, when we tried to get you guys to reduce your numbers, whether it's buffalo elk or whatever, you know, it's we can't do it. I mean, we'll try, it'll be a couple of years, we can finally, by then, the habitat's been damaged. And so with you saying that if it's a drought situation, we're gonna go with this range, does it stipulate in there that we can let enough permits out to get that number down?
Yeah, that's the whole point of having this range, is to allow us to make those decreases when they're needed.
So you can do it within the same year?
Yes, so we set the quota, the tag quotas pretty early in the year, and then the draw takes place in May, around that time frame. But if that summer has been a severe drought, we have it in the statewide elk plan that in the August wildlife board meeting, we can increase elk tags if we have that drought. So we can, if a drought is happening in that year, we can put more tags out in the hunter's hands to reduce those elk that same year.
Will you go below this quota that you're quoting here?
So the population objective is what we strive for. We want it within that range. I don't know if under like a really severe drought, dropping below that, I don't know how that would work out. We would definitely get it right down to that to the lowest end of that range. And there could be discussions on going lower if it's really deep.
So I'll comment on that.
Yeah.
We're below objective on several of our units right now. And we managed that because we were in drought on several of our units, we have dropped below our population objective.
So we have one good year, we're below our objective, but we wanna increase that objective because we got one good year. I mean, I think you're jumping the gun. I don't, I mean, I guess more of a comment or what, but it's common knowledge, there's lots of elk, and it's the root of quite a lot of problem with the mule deer.
So I guess I don't have a question. Maybe I should say this with comment, because we were part of those discussions, and our botanist came back and said the exact same thing. 1 year just make a recovery, and so Dixie and the Fish Lake weren't real comfortable with moving forward with increased numbers, and that's why they came up with the range. They said, okay, well, it's time to make the plan, and we're not ready to move forward with numbers. So how about if we just make the range, and then we can move forward, and we can adjust within that plan, and not have to say, oh, we set it too low, and now we can't go high, we can't do anything.
Yeah.
So we felt pretty good about that, but that's my comment instead of question. But I did have a question on what the metric was. I was a little unclear on what, is it just drought water cycle, or is there some sort of range condition or metric, or I missed that. So I'm not sure how we measure when we adjust up or down. Is that just, good water year, we can go up and look great, or do we need some botany information first?
Do you guys want to answer that? Yeah.
So in the Southwest Desert plan specifically, we stated that if the permittees are being asked to cut back or come off the range early, that we would manage towards the lower end of the plan.
Tammy, go ahead.
Yeah, I just, kind of a point of clarification. I was on the Beaver unit, and there was a lot of discussion about, the conflict with the livestock and that, but there has been some significant projects done up there and reseeds and different things from some fires recently. There is quite a bit of new habitat generated, through a lot of different projects, whether it was GIP and water or WRI and a lot of those reseeds on Forest Service. I think the same thing goes out west, and you just said it just perfectly. We put a range in there instead of just a top number, right? So that that leaves a place for management on the tag numbers, so we can stay on the bottom limit and on where we are already during the droughts. And then if these years, which you're absolutely right, 1 year does not make a recovery on anything, that we have that expansion or the possibility for expansion if it's warranted. So that was most of the discussion. There's a couple of committee members off the Beaver that are in the audience, so hopefully they'll make comments.
Riley, you have a question?
More of a clarification as well. Just, I know that there were quite a few of us from the RAC that were able to be on these committees. And so for those, my fellow RAC members that weren't able to, I just want to, I want to promise you that you were well represented on every level. There were individuals from every facet to represent your interests in it. And it was, I was on the Penguich Lake. Penguich Lake was we're actually under population. And that range that we went through with the livestock, with the sportsman alike, the fish and game, the BLM, with everyone, you were well represented. And the reason I point that out is so that we don't necessarily know that there are concerns. I mean, know that those were also open. And so if there are additional questions, please feel free to ask, but also at the same time, please trust that these committees were put together with well intent. Everybody did come together. And so rather than rehashing through these at each of the RAC meetings, trust in those committees and those individuals that represented you, because they were well represented. And I think personally feel like there was a lot of camaraderie, a lot of cohesiveness that went with it. Everybody has each other's backs in this, so that if we do need to make the changes in the future on whatever level, we can do that.
Thanks, Riley. Any other questions from RAC?
Can you explain how you're going to use the elk collar data to help inform these decisions? I know in the Southwest Desert, we talked about in the committee that there are areas within that unit where we will have elk concentration as the population numbers get higher, and there's going to be a conflict with livestock and things like that. But can you explain what we can do about those concentrations as part of this plan?
Yeah, so we have set up so are you mainly talking about depredation issues and contributors? Yeah. So we have quite a few tools in the statewide plan to deal with that, ranging from private land only permits for an area to get hunters just on the private lands. There's depredation tags and vouchers that can be issued directly to the landowner to kill the problem elk in their field. We can do depredation hunter pool hunts on public land around these properties. So we have a lot of tools that put targeted pressure in problem areas. And the GPS collar data we have is used in a lot of ways that I talked about, how we split up a couple elk units into two. That was based on the GPS data showing elk don't cross over there. Up in Box Elder, where I manage, we've used the GPS data from elk to give people detonation tags, see where the elk are getting onto the land, where and when, do that. And also we get survival data off these elk. So when the elk, if we have a really severe drought and a lot of elk are dying of malnutrition, we'll see that and be able to see that based on the elk, the collared elk that die. So it gives us a lot of really good tools to apply pressure to where we really need it.
Thank you.
Any questions from the public? Yeah, well, stand and state your name and ask your question, please.
I got a comment, not a question.
It's not comment time yet, just question. Sorry.
We'll get your comments.
We'll get you.
All right.
Summarize online comment.
Yeah, so again, we only had two people. I think it was the same two people throughout all of these. And both indicated, strongly agreed and strong support for the plans in Southern.
Okay, we're gonna go to public comment. When I read your name, you can stand and state your name, and you'll have 3 minutes to provide your public comment. You can state where you're at. First up is Donnie Hunter, and he'll be followed by Scott Stubbs.
Okay, my name's Donnie Hunter. I appreciate you coming on board and listen tonight. I sit on the Southwest Desert Committee, and we had a full representation of sportsmen, livestock people. We had a good committee. We talked about, Jason gave a great presentation of what we had there, what had went on the last 5 years. We had some goals that we had to, that was part of his job to make sure that those goals got done. A lot of it was the habitat work that was done. I think we done 31,000 acres of new habitat there for our elk and our livestock. I was really impressed with where we had conflicts. He was able to go in with those private landowners or permittees and get some antlerless permits in there to take care of the conflicts. And they were all taken care of. The people, the livestock people on our board was pleased with what he'd done. Anyway, we talked for 3 or 4 hours about elk and livestock and what we could all agree with. But in the end, we had a unanimous decision to go with the numbers, the 1150 to, or the 1050 to the 1250. And it was a unanimous decision. We all left on the same page. We were all happy, and it was a good experience. So, thank you.
Thanks, Tony.
So I'm Scott Stubbs. I am a wool grower. I sat on the committee on the Penguin Lake, and it's been stated that we're under objective there. The thing that makes this plan work in my mind is that we're going to target big herds. And like I say, I run on the Penguin Lake, and for some reason, even though we're under objective, I get most of them on my summer country. So these targeted hunts are a big thing in that. That's what's going to keep the livestock community behind it. It's going to take a long time to build to that number because you're going to have to kill a lot of those that are concentrating in certain areas. So yes, we come together like Riley said, and we agreed on this, but the livestock people on there, it's because we can break up these big concentrations and spread them across the unit. So I support this plan with those things in mind. Thank you.
Braden Richmond.
Yeah, Braden Richmond, I sat on the Beaver Elk Plan Committee. I'd echo what these two gentlemen said. It was a pretty diversified group. I've sat on the committee for the Beaver. Last time we were together, it wasn't as pleasant as this time. This time it was vocal. There was a lot of opinions. There was a lot of back and forth, but the committee really came together and really looked for solutions and tried to come up with an answer we could all be agreeable with. I don't remember if it was unanimous or not. it was on our committee, was also unanimous. One other point I want to make, I just really want to thank Mike Wardle on this. He talked to me years ago about the strategy to get where we're at. He put a lot of effort into keeping that unit at or under objective. Right now, we're quite a ways under objective. If you talk to the locals there, there's a lot of concern about how few of elk you see up there. So poor Mike, he gets it from both ends. There's a group that hate the elk, and then there's a whole bunch of locals that blame Mike for killing all the elk. But due to Mike's efforts and his strong backbone, we got to where we're at and shown that they can manage it and shown that he'll do what he says he'll do. And so we're asking for an increase there. Because I'm speaking for myself and I'm no longer on the RAC, I can be a little bit more controversial. So I'm going to say one thing. And hopefully this isn't overly controversial, but it is exciting that we're seeing, this is the best I've seen sportsmen and cattlemen work together on plans. It does concern me, some of the comments I've already heard in this RAC. Sportsmen have put millions of dollars on the ground to help the habitat. Cattlemen have put millions of dollars on the ground to help the habitat. They help the cattle and they help the wildlife. I haven't seen a sportsman's group or a conservation group. Now, notice I didn't say hunters, because there are some hunters that have a different viewpoint. But I haven't seen sportsmen's groups or conservation groups ever solicit to take cattle off the mountain. But I've seen cattlemen be pretty opposed. I think when we work together in these committees and we come up with resolutions where we're together, it's just critical that we figure out how to get on the same page. Sportsmen are not the enemy of cattlemen. There are a lot of enemies of cattlemen. It's not the sportsman.
Thank you, Ray. Troy Henry.
Troy Henry with Utah Farm Bureau. I'm the Southern Region Manager. First of all, we'd just like to say we're, especially to Russell and Berlin, we were included in that process and want to echo some of the sentiments that have already been given, that we appreciate the ability to be part of that process and expect to be included in the future. It's these committee systems, they work like Braden and some of these have said. It's a good process, and there was nobody that got run over and didn't want something they wanted. There was a consensus, and everybody gave something to where we had an acceptable compromise, it felt like. And also the changes aren't being proposed just to allow more opportunity. It's because the conditions allow it. The Penguich Lake unit had a significant fire in 2017, and that country's changed. It's completely different. And so those are some of the reasons why we were able to get on board with this plan. Generally, asking Utah Farm Bureau to increase elk numbers is we wouldn't even think of it normally, but because the conditions allowed, because of this process, we're able to support this process on each of these elk management plans.
Thank you. Next we have Newell Charles.
Yeah, I'm Newell Clarkson. I sat on the Beaver Committee and the state, both. But I just wanted to let you know that I don't want to repeat anything that's been said, but Berlin, the Forest Service did say, if he didn't, he could stand up and argue, but no, he can't here, but he'll agree with me that well, first of all, there has been increases on that Beaver Mountain, and it can happen. And he did say on that committee that any permittee that was willing to put forth the effort when there was forage that was available, right, that they would work with them and do that. So that's what that was my comment, was that there has been increases, and it can happen. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you. JJ Brewer.
Yeah, JJ Brewer, just representing myself. I don't need to say much. This has been really good. I was gonna say how awesome it is to see sportsmen and agriculture really meeting in the middle of this. Hats off for that. I'm specifically the Beaver. That plan looks great. It's much overdue. The elk need to grow there, and I think we've come up with a good plan there to allow agriculture and elk to do that. And also, hats off need to be taken for our biologists. They really, and Mike specifically on that, work their tails off see them in the mountains, you see them up there and spend a lot of time. And I think that's awesome. That's what's going to ultimately make wildlife in Utah continue to move forward. So yes, I agree on this plan. It's a good way to go. Thank you.
Okay, and that's all of the comment we have, so I'll open up to RAC discussion comments. Chuck, would you like to?
Yeah, we got a letter from the Forest Service. When we went to when I first went to some of my biologists and range people and said we're gonna start some committees, and they're all elk hunters. I thought, well, they'll all just say, yeah, let's do it. And they said, no, we get it. Especially our botanist said, our conditions are not ready for this. We need to talk about this more. And so I was really pleased with the way the division handled this. I'll just read this letter that kind of outlines that. If I can deal with on my glasses. That's the state of glasses, right? Sorry. So, Dear Austin Action, Sheriff, Southern Region RAC. During 2023, the Utah Division of Wildlife Resources evaluated objectives for elk management units throughout the state. Internal reviews were conducted for units where no significant changes in population objectives were being proposed. For elk management units with proposed changes to these objectives, teams were formed to discuss these changes. Teams included participants from the state, federal agencies, private livestock producers, county elected officials, and representatives from the sportsmen's organizations. The Dixie and Fish Lake National Forest appreciate the efforts of the Division of Wildlife Resources to include interested groups in their efforts to set objectives. As a result of this coordination, changes were made in objective proposals that will allow for successful management of elk and elk habitat in several important management units in southern Utah well into the future. Consequently, the Forest Service supports the proposed changes to elk objectives in all units in the southern region. We look forward to continued coordination with the Division of Wildlife Resources and its partners in the future. Sincerely, Michael Elson and Kevin Wright, Forest Supervisors of the Fish Lake and Dixie National Forests, respectively.
Thank you. Other discussion from the RAC.
My discussion or comment is, I mean, I grew up in a cattleman association as a kid and rode summer after summer, and I've never heard then it was the elk were coming in, we got to get them out. And to see this camaraderie with these committees and stuff as a sportsman is second to none, that they're willing to work together, and the management and the money that goes in from the Cattlemen Association, the wool growers, the sportsmen, everything to bring things together and make the mountain and these areas better for the animals all together. It's only going to be a success story in the future as we keep moving forward. So.
Thank you, Mike. I know for myself, at first I kind of struggled with the range idea. Sportsmen are going to want the top end of the range, and the livestock guys are going to want the bottom of the range all the time. And maybe that'll be true in some units, but I think what the range will help us do, especially as a RAC, as permit numbers come up, we'll be able to see where we're at in that range, and we can have the biologists speak to it, but we can have everybody on the RAC speak to it, from BLM, Forest Service, everybody. Say we are in a drought, and we don't think the division has recommended yet enough cuts. Let's go more permits, and we can do that on an annual basis, and not just say save all the elk because we're below the number, right? When it's a hard number. So I've come to, the ranges have grown on me a little bit. I think it'll allow some flexibility, but it'll allow more public process and not just a hard number. Those are my friends. Tammy, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm gonna call Newell out for calling me a liar. If his numbers went up, he's the only one that I know of, and he's in Miller County, so it doesn't count. Anyway, no, I preach the same song, sing the same song I've done forever, that the livestock and the wildlife and the hunters sportsmen have got to be on the same page, because we have common enemies, and if we don't stick together, we're all going down on our own. It's happened in other industries on public lands and under multiple use and stuff. And, you know, you look at your timber industry and different things like that. So we've got to stick together. And I was really happy with our meetings that we had on the beaver. I'm always one that wants to drag that, you know, keep that bottom end down. But I think that range, with what you said, Austin, that range, the upper and lower end is going to be helpful in the end. Gives us a management tool that we haven't had before, and then some goals to look towards. I appreciate the guys that were on the committee with us, and I think we came to the consensus. I think we agreed on it. So,
Thank you, Jim.
I've been on some of these committees too, mainly the Bison Committee now in the Henry Mountains. Probably why I'm not invited many of the others, but what concerns me is it looks like the ranchers got pushed pretty good, because I don't know if any of these bottom ends of these units start at what the objective is now. Why, I mean, your top objective was certain, and now you're starting that range up 100 head or more, and then going up to the 500 head. It just looks to me like if the objective was a certain amount, how come we're going up higher and to a range that's a lot higher on these units? It just rubs me the wrong way. Why don't you start at least the bottom end, be the top of what you had last time? Yeah, I've never seen an increase in AUMs or permits on the forest or the BLM that I know of. Sometimes you could talk them into extending the off date or something like that, which usually doesn't work for a guy's operation. You guys gonna have more elk, more numbers. I've got to stay at my same numbers. And like an example, this year, I weaned, my calves were 50 pounds heavier than last year, basically on average. So I gained $2 a pound. I gained a little money, but if I'd have had another whole calf out there, maybe it didn't weigh that 50 pounds, but that's a lot of money, a lot more money. Calves are bringing some $1,500 to $1,800 a head now, but you know, versus the $100 or $200 I got for the extra weight. So it just rubs me the wrong way that you guys can say, oh, we had one good year, we got some forage out there, and I think you're getting a benefit from that forage and I think it's a benefit from what we've done. I had a lot more deer in my field this fall. They checked the calendar, and the day that my depredation tag expired, they showed up. So anyway, the deer population outside my field is a lot better, and they're fat and they're shiny and they look really good. But that's my problem with this deal is you go, this range is great, and we had to argue till we were blue in the face on the buffalo to get them to agree to go to a lower number during the drought and do it right now, do it in the August board meeting, go get those numbers. So I'm glad that it's spilled over into the elk, but it just bothers me that you're starting your low end a couple of hundred head higher than what your top end was last year. And yeah, the habitat's there this year, but I've seen it before. tried to increase my herd and ended up having to decrease it because of the drought after one good year. I still had to call because of conception rate and different things, and so I'm down 100 head. What I should be on, that I'm permitted for on the forest, the BLM, and on my private land, and so I'm still trying to get up there and to my permit numbers that I'm allotted for, and they haven't increased any, even though we hit them about it every time we have a meeting. Anyway, that's my problem, why I can't, it doesn't fit good with me that yours started the low end, a couple of hundred head above what the top end was last time on most of these units. And then, like you were talking about, if your elk get congregated to one place that we're gonna go break them up, good luck with that. If you can get them to do that, I wanna know how that works. Okay, I'm done.
Thanks, Bill. Other discussion? Anybody like to make a motion for us to consider?
I'll make a motion to accept it as presented.
So Mike makes a motion to accept as presented. Tammy?
I'll second that.
Tammy makes a second. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, we'll call for a vote. Those here in the room. In favor of Mike's motion. 4. Merlin, you're gonna vote against that. And those online, all in favor of the motion made by Mike to accept as presented.
Looks like Rachel's frozen.
I'm a 4. Can you hear me? I'm a 4.
Rachel's 4. Chad and Brian?
4.
Okay. We got 5. 9, 1, 10 to 1. 10 to 1, motion passes. Erlen, would you like to explain your no vote anymore?
No, just what I said already. I think you should start. You bottom 100 head above what your top was last time. Cattlemen would put in hours and much money as everybody else as far as he's keeping these allotments alive and working, so.
Thank you.
I just might want to comment that, I can vote for it and then because the individuals, most of them that I visited that were directly involved in the planning, they were on board with it. So I think it's a good plan. I think everything's working. I'm pretty sure we'll be back at this discussion as to how well it did.
Thank you, Russell. Okay, we'll move on to agenda item number 7. Thank you, Dan. We got Wyatt here. This is number 7. Coaching.
So just a quick summary on this. Coaching reported reward permit rule allows the division to issue permits for individuals that report poaching instances. And through the years, we've had a couple occurrences that didn't really fall cleanly into the rule. And so some of those are what's part of this presentation today, as well as some house cleaning stuff. So we'll go over those 4 items that are the general recommendations for this proposal. One is the removal of cougar permits as part of this rule. With the House, passing the House Bill 469 last year, there's no more cougar permits, so it's not pertinent to the rule. So that's just a simple house cleaning item to fall in line with current code. The second one is to provide greater protections for those that may report a poaching incident where their safety or potential livelihood concerns may come into play. And third one is if someone reports 2 or more poaching events that are eligible for permits in a given year, the rule doesn't cleanly address that. So there's clarification on how we can address an individual that may have 2 or more reports in a given year to qualify for a reward permit. And then the last one would be kind of broadening the scope of charges that would qualify for a poaching reward permit. So as it stands now in rule, excuse me, it has to be a wanton destruction charge in order to qualify. So our proposal would be to expand that to the unlawful take of a trophy animal as well. And wanton destruction is just generally a very high level, severe violation. And there's a number of cases that we have had throughout the years where charges were the appropriate charges were unlawful take, the effort that the individual, the reporting party put into the case, and the value that we saw in the case, we felt like would warrant or should warrant a reward permit. However, didn't meet the current standard in rules, so we weren't able to issue that reward. So that's just an exception or an allowance to broaden that scope under which a reward permit.
Thank you, Brad. Questions from the right? I have a couple questions. In your presentation, you said, I believe the number you used was between 0 and 11 permits. But then when you talked about someone potentially receiving multiple permits, 3 or more, can you clarify that? Is how many of these permits are generally issued every year?
I would say on average, we're probably 6 to 8. Yeah, so
statewide.
Statewide. The rules, generally speaking, compared to permits that are allocated statewide, it's super small. Super small.
Second question, unlawful take can that still be a state felony?
No. So wanton destruction, I'm going to explain this because it's been something that's been brought up at every grad. So wanton destruction is our our strongest law in wildlife law. It has longer suspension times associated, or can have a longer suspension time associated with the wanton destruction charge, as well as the severity of the charges can go up to and include felony charges. And so it is something that we try to reserve for an individual that's truly out there abusing the resource and maybe warrant a felony violation. Unlawful take, it tops out at a B. It really is just a class B misdemeanor. It has lesser suspension durations in most cases, and obviously you don't have a felony concern. So it's an example of those two. The difference between them might be an extreme wanton destruction violation, maybe shooting a deer without a license in January with a spotlight. And an unlawful take violation may be someone that's hunting on a spiked unit that hurries or rushes a shot at an elk moving through the trees, and it ends up being a branch antler. So, a spike tag that may fall more into the unlawful take.
And whoever turned that in could get a spike tag.
So it wouldn't be under this rule just because it has to be a trophy, and a bull is a 6 points on one side.
I'm curious, how many people that call the hotline give you their name for poaching incidents versus just remain anonymous? Is this change to help address some of that? Staying anonymous?
So not generally, but it does help that. So that's a little bit tougher to answer just because the last couple of years we've implemented a text-to-tip system that comes in anonymous. And so that information, when we receive it, unless we solicit it or ask for it, or they voluntarily provide it, all those tips are anonymous. Historically, we've had the Help Stop Poaching hotline number, and the vast majority of those that come through the hotline are more than willing to provide their name and information. The protections that we're potentially could see or have seen in years past are spouses, ex-spouses, business partners, things of that nature, where reporting those types of things could
potentially have a safety concern, but and so this is more to encourage that type of reporting where, hey, we have the ability to reward you with a coveted tag, and we have the ability to protect your identity if you choose to do so.
Thank you. Any other questions? Questions from the public?
Going much faster than last one.
Broken record. We had 2 comments, both strongly agreed.
I have no public comment cards. Lucky you. So RAC discussion. Any concerns with this? Anything needs to be brought up? Are we ready to make a motion? Let's do it.
I'll make a motion to accept the proposal.
Chuck makes a motion to accept agenda item number 7.
I'll second.
Seconded by Dan. You got that? All right, all those in favor, here in person? Unanimous here in person, and online, Chad raises his hand. I've got a thumbs up, I got everybody but Riley and Rachel.
Riley's frozen.
I'm good.
Riley's good.
I'm 4 also.
Perfect, unanimous. You got it. Okay, that's our last action. One more informational agenda item, because we're in a lucky southern region.
Do you want me to give a?
That would be great.
Sure. Yeah, and that's why I'm here. So, if you want it. So this project has been, probably like almost 10 years in the making. Woundfin, just to kind of give you guys a little background, and I'm not going to go way into the weeds, even though I'm a nerdy fish biologist, but woundfin have been endangered for like 53 years. So they're a species that has been kind of a long-term recovery management species for Division of Wildlife. And this project, we are really just looking for support. We have the support of the Water District as well as the Virgin River Program, who we work with to manage endangered woundfin. And we just want to be transparent through this whole process. So that's why we're here providing information and just looking for the support for this project. The upstream extent of woundfin, when you guys looked at the presentation, I had maps. I can show stuff if you guys need, but the upstream extent of woundfin stops at what we call Patempe Hot Springs in Washington County. It's a natural hot springs. It comes out in like over 100 different places in the river, in the Virgin River system, and it adds a lot of salinity and minerals to the Virgin River. It's been there for a long time, since like the Pleistocene maybe. I'm not a geologist, but so I might be a little off on that time frame, but it's been there a long time. And so the Water District, along with USGS, is looking at ways to improve the water quality in the Virgin River system for downstream users. The majority of Washington County's water comes out of the Virgin River for culinary use, but it has to be taken upstream of Patempe Hot Springs. So the Water District, along with USGS, is looking at creative ways of removing Patempe from the Virgin River system and increasing the potential use of culinary water for downstream users, and also improving water quality for agriculture and total dissolved solids and all those things for downstream users in the Colorado River as well. And so the issue with this is Patempe puts in a lot of salinity and minerals, like we said. The upstream extent of woundfin is Patempe. So the concern we have is that this water quality may be important for woundfin, and that's why they're not found above it. We've done, the Virgin River Program has paid for in laboratory studies. Woundfin are not the hardiest in the lab. And so they're the results of manipulating salinity and looking at wound fin survival have not really been very conclusive. So this is what brings us to like, let's put them in the river above Patempe. And if they survive and can reproduce, we're not as worried about, you know, removing Patempe and pumping it off stream. If they don't, that's going to have to be another conversation. We'll have to sit down and figure out where to go from there. But then at least we would have a better direction for the water district and our partners of, can this research proceed? You know, is it a problem? Do we need to look at other avenues? So hopefully that explains it better than, and for some of you who don't have a lot of background on that, I apologize. I'm happy to answer questions. So.
Oh, thank you very much. Any questions from the RAC? Chuck?
So in your proposal, you said that you're gonna stock fish monthly, is that what?
No. Yeah. So we would stock the wound fin. And I should have said, we actually have a permit with Fish and Wildlife. These fish will be a surplus population. They will not be managed as an endangered species. So they will have no effect to any of the water users in the section they get stocked in. They won't affect the activities that the water users do, and they won't be treated as endangered, if that makes sense.
Okay,
so the stocking will be annual, and the original research proposal we wrote for stocking for up to 5 years. Woundfin have a very short life cycle. They live really 1 to 2 years in the wild. So it's going to take multiple stockings to be able to look at survival and retention and even recruitment.
Okay, so I guess I got mixed up on my monthly, that you're gonna be checking monthly?
Yes.
Or, and then my next question is how many years, and you said 5?
5 is the stocking, and up to 10 years for studying
10 years study.
their survival and monitoring post-stocking from the initial stocking dates.
Bart, do you have a question?
I think I recalled from the presentation something about the Water Conservancy being able to remove some of these fish. Is that something I recalled? Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so enable to make everybody, all the partners and the water district comfortable with all of their constituents that if at any point during the study there's concerns and they want the fish removed, the division has agreed in part of our MOU with the water district that we'll go in and mechanically remove the fish if necessary during the study period.
Can you maybe guess as to why that might be, why that might occur?
It was really to put all of the water users at ease that this wouldn't, you know, if something were to happen and, you know, what if, you know, it got brought up, like, what if Woundfin do so well and then they populate the stream and they're doing so well up there, we want them gone. Okay, we'll remove them. You
So
know,
I guess
after
is it an on-demand, or is it they have to have a legitimate reason that's vetted and?
Yes, it would have to be a legitimate reason that they bring to the water district, and then the water district would sit down with the Virgin River Program, Division of Wildlife, and have a conversation of what's the concern. Because we've already guaranteed there will be no change to any of the water management and usage in that section of stream, so.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Well, thank you so much for your presentation. I know I'm always amazed at how many things the DNR and DWR is doing, stuff that we honestly take for granted sometimes. So commend you for all your hard work and good job.
Thank you.
So it's very interesting to learn about. So, and we don't have to vote on anything with this item, right?
No, we can certainly take RAC comment questions or public comment.
Any public comments, questions? Okay. Good luck with the fish.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Ben.
I'll take all the luck we can get.
Okay, that wraps up our last agenda item for tonight. So the board meeting for all these items will be January 4th, 2024, up in Farmington. And then our next RAC meeting for the Southern Region will be April 16th back in Cedar City. That will be permit numbers, everything for this upcoming year.
Are we back at SUU, Adam? So we'll be back for our larger meetings, November and April. Just plan on being on the university, so we have room to accommodate.
So take a motion to adjourn. Russell makes a motion. Berlin seconds. All in favor?
Hi.
Unanimous. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Please stay safe.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Thanks, everybody.